strike in Iran's southern Pars oil and gas refinery. On Thursday, January 4, 2018, the workers and staff of the prominent Iranian oil and gas southern Pars refinery in the city of Asuliyeh, the capital of the Asuliyeh County, in Bushehr province, southern Iran, went on strike. It is notable that 3 days ago, on Monday, January 1, 2018, in line with the nationwide protests against the Iranian regime, the social headquarters of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, PMY-MEK, had called for a strike in the oil industry, in addition to military and ammunition production industries, as a necessary and vital step to cripple the Iranian regime. U.S. Department of State on the continuing protests in Iran. The U.S. Department of State today issued a press statement on the Iranian people's nationwide protests against the clerical regime. In parts of this statement, it reads, "We continue to monitor closely the protests and violence in Iran. The Iranian people have been expressing their desire for dignified treatment, an end to corruption, improved transparency, and increased economic opportunities. We support these legitimate aspirations of the Iranian people and call on the government to allow the free exchange of ideas and information." U.S. says, "We have authority to hold Iran regime accountable for protesters' deaths." Russia urged the U.S. Thursday not to meddle in Iran's affairs, but the U.S. State Department followed just a few hours later with a forceful statement in support of Iranian protesters. The State Department said it condemns the deaths and arrests related to Iranian demonstrators in the strongest possible terms. "We have ample authorities to hold accountable those who commit violence against protesters, contribute to censorship, or steal from the people of Iran. To the regime's victims, we say, you will not be forgotten," the statement read. Trump's UN envoy, Ambassador Nikki Haley, has called for an emergency Security Council meeting on Iran, saying the UN needed to speak out in support of the protesters. As yet, the meeting is scheduled for Friday. Iran. Undeclared curfew, mass arrests in city of Izeh. Following the heroic uprising of the people of Izeh in Khuzestan province, where the repressive forces were unable to confront the people and many of the regime's agents ran away, the clerical regime dispatched many groups of IRGC and besieged forces from the surrounding areas to suppress the people and practically imposed an undeclared curfew in this city. Guards and other agents are constantly patrolling on vehicles or on foot across the city, especially during the night. The IRGC and intelligence forces arrested a large number of youth in the city, and arrests are going on. The number of arrestees reaches at least 116. The Iranian resistance calls on the Security Council, the Secretary General, and other relevant organs of the United Nations to condemn the crimes of the religious fascism ruling Iran against demonstrators and take immediate action to release the arrested people during recent days throughout Iran.
سقاز 15 دین و شش شاید برزد دی خامنه دز مردن با توابتن اگرشتا همی ورا اوش
اینجا فرمانداری عراقه که مردم درش شکوندن و ریختن داخل. جمعیت واقعا خیلی خوبه.
تجمع bu zillati. Azerbaycan milleti tecemmez bu zillati. Azerbaycan milleti tecemmez bu zillati.
اینجا الان زنجانه، جو امنیتی خیلی سنگین. 15 تهمات جمعه است. از ترسشون همه ریختن بیرون، انواع یگان ویژه و اینا.
با سلام، بنده یکی از فرمانده‌های بسیج هستم. طی این ویدئو میخواهم حکم مسئولیت خودم رو آتش بزنم. این ویدئو برای 14 هست، 14 دی 1396. بنده میخوام به مردم بپیوندم، در این حکم رو آتیش بزنم و بگم واضح: مرگ بر دیکتاتور، مرگ بر نظام جمهوری اسلامی ایران و مرگ بر خامنه‌ای. امیدوارم پاسدارا و بسیجی‌هایی که صدای منو میشنون زودتر به مردم بپیوندن و تا دیر نشده و نه روبروشون وایسن.
ماشاءالله بچهای لایجان، ایوالله
مرکز لایجان
اون چیگونه شرج بوق زمان بکنیم. بزن بوق بزن.
Azerbaycan milleti tecemmez bu zilleti. 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 نمیخوام بسیجیه بی غیرت، 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 نمیخوام بسیجیه بی غیرت.
امروز 15 دی ماه هستش. نیروی انتظامی اومده تمام این شعارهایی که روی در دیوارا نوشتن رو پاک میکنه با اسپری.
داره میگیره آقا این چیکار کرده مگه؟ آقا نه آقا دوربینم رو ول کن.
موتورهای امنیتی رو میبینیم که به سمت میدان آزادی میرن. امروز روز جمعه است، ساعت
15 دی ماه ساعت 4:40 بعد از اون.
برای سرکوب مردم میرن متاسفانه.
The United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting this afternoon about the recent protests in Iran. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, is calling for support of those protests, but others there at the UN are calling the meeting itself an overreach by the U.S. Correspondent Benjamin Hall reports.
9 days in, and anti-government protests continue, despite attempts by the regime to overshadow them. For 3 days, Iran has held counter-rallies, showing tens of thousands of people supporting the government. It's thought many are bussed in. And at Friday prayers, to chants of death to America and Israel, leading hardline cleric Ahmed Khatami again blamed the US.
Those who got involved in the protests and still insist on their positions, they are Americans. Show no mercy to Americans.
At the emergency UN Security Council meeting, Nikki Haley again stood by the protesters.
And let there be no doubt whatsoever, the United States stands unapologetically with those in Iran who seek freedom for themselves, prosperity for their families, and dignity for their nation.
The US has also imposed new sanctions on 5 Iranian companies linked to the country's ballistic missile program, though some have called for more.
Severe financial sanctions, including denying access to international banking system, must be imposed on the regime.
The protests are now the most serious internal crisis the regime has faced in almost a decade. 21 people are dead and many hundreds arrested. The opposition have long complained the regime prioritizes weapons over its people.
Any funding that comes to their hand, example the nuclear deal, is not going to spend on people who are starving on the streets.
This is a new wave of protesters, poor and mainly under 25, angry at the regime's corruption. Crucially, they come from the regime's traditional rural strongholds. Many look abroad for support.
Today, the world stands in support of the Iranian people, particularly Western democracies, the United States of America included. That will send a very clear message that we are no longer going to fall into the same trappings that this regime has set for all of us all these years.
It's hard to know what happens next, whether the protests continue or if they peter out. But many feel that something major has shifted, and either way, the Iranian regime is starting to crack. Brett?
Benjamin Hall in London. Benjamin, thank you.